Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the fourth and final IRENA policy talks of 2020. As some of you who have been attending these talks would know that these are a series of online events that provide a forum for renewable energy policy discussions. These have been facilitating experience sharing as also best practices in the policy design and implementation. They also aim to generate feedback from IRENA member states, policymakers, and experts to support IRENA's implementation of the work program and ensure relevance and accuracy. Today's policy talk, in partnership with IRENA Coalition for Action, focuses on citizen-led renewable energy projects, commonly known as community energy. IRENA sees community energy playing an important role in energy transition and a post-COVID recovery due to the potential to generate local socioeconomic benefits of renewables and increasing the public support for renewable energy. I would like to here, just briefly touch upon an incident. I happened to visit a village a couple of years back, which is in central India, and it's a water-stressed area. And I was actually invited by the villagers to see the water supply system that they have powered through solar PV. And I was really surprised at the very sophisticated way in which they were handling the technology and also the water supply and its distribution. So I was curious and I asked how they actually put this together. And I was told that one of the villagers who used to migrate every year for a few months was at a construction site near a solar park, and got very interested in this technology and got to understand how it works, and came back and got the villagers very enthused about doing something in the village. And that's how they actually put together the money, got some grants from the local political head, and put this all together, and they were really managing it very well. It was really amazing to see how empowering it was and the ease at which they were handling the technology. So, I just think that these are such examples that we will hear today. There are also issues and challenges that the countries are facing that we hope that through this forum we'll have a discussion on. So while renewable energy investments by citizens have gained traction in a number of countries, global policy attention and knowledge exchange on community energy continues to be limited. In response to this, the IRENA Coalition for Action, now gathering more than 100 leading renewable energy players from civil society, industry associations, and private sector, established a working group on the topic in 2017. The working group latest white paper launched today focuses on stimulating investment in community energy. The paper showcases how policies can be designed to foster community energy investment and how community energy projects are presently financed. We hope that this paper will lay the groundwork for increased efforts on scaling up community energy investments. Right now, we have an unprecedented opportunity to accelerate energy transition. In order to achieve this, we need to make sure that all energy players are on board and communities are able to play an active role in the transition. Only by doing so, we can build back better from the pandemic and pave the way for inclusive and resilient economies. To set the scene for today's policy talk, I now hand it over to Rabia Faruqi, Director of IRENA's Knowledge, Policy and Finance Center. Thank you all for joining us today. and I wish you a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Deputy Director General. Thank you, Gauri. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It really gives me a great pleasure to be here today and set the scene on IRENA's side on this really important topic on community energy, and basically the opportunity to broaden renewable energy ownership. Community energy is an important opportunity for scaling up investment in renewables in the coming years, and while at the same time maximizing really the socioeconomic benefits that accrue from the transition. As we know, an energy transition in line with global climate objectives and SDGs will require significant investments in renewables and other energy transition related technologies. The IRENA's recent launch of the global landscape of renewable energy finance shows that investment in 2018 reached about $320 billion, a modest growth in 2019. This is a slight decrease from 2016-17, mainly due to falling costs in technology in the power sector, but also due to insufficient financing being channeled towards renewables. So looking at renewables alone, we will need to mobilize, according to our scenario, IRENA's energy transition scenario, about $800 billion annually through 2050. And this is how we can fulfill the key global decarbonization and climate goals. The IRENA Coalition for Action's latest white paper analyzes how, next to the private sector, communities can help bridge this investment gap through collective investment in renewables and shared ownership of projects. It's in this context that the IRENA Coalition for Action describes the community energy, and I quote, as the economic and operational participation and ownership by citizens or members of a defined community in a renewable energy project. A diverse range of community energy projects can be found around the world. Just to give you some examples, there are cooperatives that provide energy services to communities, community trusts investing project returns into local development, and communities establishing partnerships with local governments, utilities, and the private sector. Over the last 10 years, IRENA, as you know, has been analyzing the socioeconomic benefits of renewables. We have clear evidence that the energy transition can bring massive socioeconomic benefit in terms of GDP growth, in terms of job, in terms of welfare gains, in terms of potential redistribution of wealth. And that's true both in the short term and the long term, provided, of course, the appropriate policy frameworks are put in place. Community energy can play a very important role in ensuring that those socioeconomic benefits go back to the community. For example, community energy projects are more likely to employ local workforce, build local capacity and skills, and reinvest in local enterprises, services, and goods. In many countries, community energy can further accelerate access to energy and increase the possibilities for productive uses, further spurring local economic development and improving livelihoods. More importantly, community energy is a vehicle for empowering communities and making them an integral part of the energy transition, or should I say transitions, because they're different from country to regions, ensuring it is just, fair, and equitable. Now, we have to also look at the fact that in many countries community energy continues or its development continues to face regulatory, financial, institutional barriers. Non-commercial and small actors like communities face different challenges from other renewable energy players in terms of access to financing, to support mechanisms, etc. IRENA's work has shown how deployment policies can be designed to take into consideration the specific characteristics of small or new actors, and we have a range of work on auctions, for example, where we clearly see how the design of policies should help smaller players and new actors into the game, but it's true also of other policies. Additional barriers such as knowledge gaps and different risk profiles of communities have made it more challenging actually to attract financing from traditional sources. For example, community energy projects below a certain size may simply not attract the interest of commercial bankers, lenders. Despite these challenges, there is much that governments and financial institutions can do to overcome these barriers. So I would like to now hand over the second part of this presentation to Anna Skowron. She's project manager at of 100% renewable energy at the World Future Council, and one of the lead authors of the white paper. And she will be presenting the coalition's finding on how to further stimulate investment in community energy. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Rabia, and also thank you for the very nice introduction to investment needs in renewables and the benefits of community energy. And it is my pleasure to be here today and present the coalition's joint findings stipulated in the white paper. As Rabia mentioned, broad participation in the energy transition is key to maximizing the socioeconomic benefits of renewables. And for that, governments can and must stimulate investments in community energy by establishing a policy framework that provides market access to all actors, including citizens and communities. And these frameworks can include a mix of measures such as regulatory measures, promoting market entry for community energy projects, financial measures supporting the funding of projects, or also administrative measures helping communities gain the skills and knowledge they really need to develop a renewable energy project on their own. And to give you some examples, targets and local ownership quotas are a highly visible way for governments to demonstrate that commitment to community energy. Denmark, for instance, has pioneered different policy measures favoring community energy over the years, including until recently a local ownership quota for wind energy projects. Scotland, on the other hand, has set a target to reach 1 gigawatt of community and locally owned renewable generation capacity by the end of 2020. Likewise, one-stop shops are a great opportunity to help disseminate best practices, support communities with project development, and connect communities with funding sources. One example of this is the Victoria State Government in Australia, which funded a pilot program to establish regional community power hubs, or CARES, in Scotland. Given that we are seeing an increasing use of auctions to procure renewables, it is also important to talk about those as well. Unfortunately, I have to say, experience to date suggests that engaging communities successfully in auctions remains a big challenge. And auction design schemes favoring smaller and newer players, which is creating local jobs, does need to be developed as well. Finally, financial incentives like grants, loans, and tax incentives continue to be quite a popular way of de-risking early stage activities and offsetting capital costs for community energy projects. Next slide, thanks. And now I would like to quickly touch on how community energy projects can be financed. So many community energy projects draw on multiple financing options. As many community energy projects strive for high shares of community ownership naturally, community members are in most cases also key financial contributors. However, the debt to equity ratios for community energy projects vary widely due to the factors such as the specific risk profile of a community and also the institutional environment within which it operates. And as you can see on the slide currently, community energy continues to rely on diverse external financing sources. With mandates to support development outcomes, development finance institutions and climate funds can play a key role in directing community energy investments in developing countries through grants as well as risk mitigation instruments, like, for instance, first loss loans to facilitate access to capital. Our analysis, however, found that while DFIs are deploying measures to support small and medium-scale renewable energy projects, these measures can be better tailored to community energy. For instance, through capacity building in communities and local partners, involving communities actively in decision-making, or also providing communities with the opportunity to assume project ownership. We also found that innovative financing and business models enabled through technology like pay-as-you-go schemes and crowdfunding can help communities to reduce their upfront investment requirements. Next slide, thanks. And to wrap things up, I would like to leave you with a few key takeaways on how governments and financial institutions can stimulate investments in community energy. For instance, they can adopt targets and policy designs that value citizen participation as well as local socioeconomic development. This should be done in consultation with key stakeholders like community energy representatives. They also can facilitate community access to capital through, for instance, targeted public finance. And these measures should obviously be tailored to national and local contexts as well. Likewise, they can support innovative financing mechanisms and business models which take into account the unique characteristics of community energy via preserving project ownership and control. And finally, integrating community energy in energy access and local development programs can help to tap into community energy's potential to support local economic development. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. And I would like to hand over to Mr. Stefan Sänger, Secretary General at the World Wind Energy Association, and also Chair of the Community Energy Working Group, who will be moderating the panel discussion now. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anna. A great pleasure to be here with all of you. Indeed, this is it's a special day that we can present this paper. And Anna, thanks a lot this point of time also for your personal contribution. I'm now very pleased, and I thank you also for introducing myself. I'm very pleased now to introduce our panelists. We have distinguished panelists for the discussion. And may I introduce Dr. Atiyur Rahman, who is the now Banga Bandhu Chair Professor at the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh, and he's the former governor of the Central Bank of Bangladesh. Of course, Bangladesh, one of, I would say, the pioneers in small-scale and community-based renewable energy. Secondly, my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Habiba Ali. She's the Managing Director and CEO of Sosai Renewable Energies, a company based in Nigeria that empowers local businesses in her country and communities with affordable renewable energy solutions, closely related to, of course, the important topic of access to energy. And last but not least, Mr. Dirk van Sintian from Europe. He's the president of the European Umbrella Organization for Renewable Energy Cooperatives. He's the president of the organization called RESCO. Now, I'd like to ask each panelist a kind of introductory question and request you to answer in 3 minutes. Please briefly introduce your work that is related to community energy and how you have been involved in supporting community energy. So, Dr. Atiyur Rahman, if we may start with you.
Thank you, Stefan. I wear many hats. So in earlier incarnation, I used to be working with many of the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and there we used to work with the community. But that experience helped me when I became the governor of the central bank in 2009. And immediately I thought the central bank could take a lead in changing the mindset of the bankers, and if they could go more green and if they could become inclusive. So what I did, I encouraged an NGO called RDF to really start solar irrigation program. You know, the irrigation programs were run by diesel, and they were really doing a lot of climate change damages. So, but the banks were not interested in giving them, loans at a lower rate of interest. So we created a fund called, green fund, and we gave refinance to the banks so that the banks would be interested in getting into a partnership with the NGOs. I remember it was 9th July 2009. I went to a village in Barguna, one of the coastal belt where the climate change is very active, and we initiated this solar irrigation program. And the program was that the villagers will have to come into community like a cooperatives, and they will put all in a membership. They will get the community loans from the bank, and the solar power pump will give the power to the water to their land, and they can take the share of it. And when there is no cultivation, they can still use that electricity, surplus electricity, into different activities for their household activities and business activities. So that was a small start, but I'm happy to hear that the same company by now have about 1,274 of the similar SIPs, and they have covered about 15,000 people around. So that's how I started. But then I thought, it's a small thing, but we should really push for a bigger thing. Then there is a financial institution called ITCOL, which was under the central bank, regulation. So we encouraged ITCOL to really mobilize funds from abroad, and World Bank, ADB, KfW, JICA all came in for that kind of fund, and ITCOL then created partnership with about 20 NGOs, and those partnership now have really gone back together, covered about few 500,000 of the farmers in community groups. They have saved 10 million liter diesel, costing about 650 million taka, and they have generated about 45 megawatts every day electricity, and creating huge impact on the community. Their income has gone up. Not only that, they are addressing the climate change. Again, we then created more fund in the central bank for green transformation, so that people could get access to this fund. And we created a fund called Green Transformation Fund, about $300 million, so that people can take that fund and not only for private investment, but also can work for the community. And we encouraged the banks to go for corporate social responsibility, and we made it a point that every bank becomes socially responsible, so they work for the climate change and provide support to the villages in the remote areas, solar pumps, solar panels, so that people can have cleaner access. And as you know, Bangladesh is a pioneer in terms of solar home systems. About 4.1 million of the solar homes have already been installed, and the climate change is a big issue in Bangladesh. And our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is now the leader of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, and she thinks. Recently, she wrote a piece in the Financial Times where she wrote, jobs must be priority, but so are the jobs of the future and building solid foundations for decades to come. And she provides support for those kind of things. Most of the rural street lights are solar run. Many of the remote villages are becoming solar villages because of her support from the fiscal support which she's giving, and the central bank combining the support together. So that's how Bangladesh has been moving, and I'm happy to be a part of that great transformation in Bangladesh.
Thank you so much. And that's really impressive because you've already explained us how you scaled up that. I think it's a great example. Now I would like to go to Mrs. Habiba Ali from Nigeria. If you could briefly introduce yourself and how you are related, your work is related to community energy.
Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Habiba Ali. I am from Sosai Renewable Energies Company based in Kaduna, Nigeria. We've been in community energy deployment for over 10 years now. And then what we've been doing is actually being able to work with the communities to find tailor-made solutions to address their energy problems. And we try to find renewable energy resources that can actually address that problem that we've found. So for example, when I say tailor-made solutions, we've been able to sit down with community members and found out, for example, that that community was a major tomato farmer or a pepper farmer. And one of their major problems is that during the season, they had this influx of tomatoes or peppers. And they were always either stuck with the peppers or they had to trade away or sell it at ridiculously low prices. And for this, we were able to help together with them design a project that we sourced financing from USADF, and we deployed a solar dryer to that community. And the way we planned the solution was that the women in the community we selected a group of women, about 10 women, were now the custodians of the dryers. They are the ones who collect crops from the farmers, dry it on their dryers, and then collect some sort of amount of money for that service being rendered. The idea is that behind the women get some sort of income for themselves, ensuring economic growth for the women. And also, hopefully, we were thinking at that time that these monies can actually come to a point where it grows and they could deploy more solutions, more dryers or other needed renewable energy services. So that's what we've done. And this is also besides having deployed mini-grids in such communities, solar home kits to some other communities. So it depends on what we feel from the community as a need, and that's what we address as a solution to them. So if we go to a community and, for example, now we've been getting a lot of cries from some other communities who want to have an opportunity to farm all year round. So we're beginning to talk to some other financiers and funders to see how we can maybe work with irrigation companies and deploy solutions in irrigations to such communities. In the long run, what we do is we ensure that we make these solutions affordable to the people. Of course, we also try to work with high quality products. So how do we make it affordable? We ensure that the payments for these solutions are also structured in such a way that the people find it easier to pay. So we use a lot of pay-as-you-go leasehold model in ensuring payments. As a business, we also have to remain in business, even though we are a social enterprise and we're not an NGO, we're for profit, but we're trying to do business for the good of society. We also try to see how we can mark up a bit and ensure that we're still in existence for as long as is needed to address a lot of communities. So for the past 10 years that we've been in existence, we've deployed over 15,000 solar solutions across the communities that we work. We have about 3 working mini grids. We're currently doing about 2. We're piloting a certain model of interconnected mini grid acceleration. This is connecting a mini grid in an existing community that has very minimal supply of energy from the grid at least. And the maximum they get is about 4 hours a day. So we're going to optimize that in the interconnected mini grid acceleration scheme and ensure that the community now has energy much more than they have. At least what we're aiming at is to ensure that they get nothing less than 22 hours of electricity on a daily basis. So these are the kind of works that we've been doing in community energy, and mostly our our work has been like 80% in rural communities of Nigeria so far.
Thanks so much for sharing your perspective from Nigeria with us, which I think is a very, very important one. And now let's go to Europe. We have here Dirk van Sintian. And Dirk, how did you get into this? Europe has quite actually diversity in terms of community energy and the role, but what's your role and how did you get into the field?
Well, I often tell people it is a coincidence. I'm involved in renewable energy and in energy cooperatives. I studied Germanic philology. I'm a linguist, and after my study, I wanted to become an organic farmer, which seems a natural thing coming out of university, maybe at that time. And I didn't find a farm, but we found an old water mill. It was a national monument. We had to renovate it, to restore it. And there was a turbine from 1902 that used to provide the whole village with electricity. And so that's where it started. We set up to finance the renovation of the turbine, 70 kilowatt, 400,000 kilowatt hours a year. We set up a cooperative in 1991. And we started with 10 people around our kitchen table at home. We still have the table. But now our cooperative has grown to a cooperative, fairly large energy cooperative, one of the largest in Europe, of 60,000 members. And we have invested in wind, in solar, in hydro, in biomass. And we now supply about 1.6, 1.7% of the Flemish households with their own green electricity. So it's about 100 gigawatt hours a year. So this is a bit my personal story. And for EcoPower, at a certain moment, mid 2008, let's say, we discovered we were not alone. We discovered that there were other energy cooperatives in other countries, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Germany. And we brought them together at the European Parliament, and this resulted in a European research project. And in 2013, one of the results was that we created a federation that tries to represent all the community energy projects and organizations that are around. It's not all cooperatives, as already said in the beginning. So we think there are more than 3,500 initiatives now. Most of them are very young, created over the past 2 decades. But some of them are there from the very beginning of the electrification of Europe. Some of them are more than a century old. So, and we as a federation, we try to advocate the community energy across Europe. And when we look at where they are situated now, it's more something of Northwestern Europe than of Southern Europe. And especially it's not something of the former socialist or communist countries in the east of Europe. There we're absent. So one of the big challenges we face as a federation is to spread the model in Eastern Europe and in the Balkan countries, for instance. I'll keep it to that.
Thanks so much, Dirk. And then let's do it this way, the other way around. I would just continue with you. One of the findings that we have from the conclusions we have from the white paper, and we had a very long discussion, many experts who were also contributing to it, was that some of the communities we see, they do find challenges to access finance. Now, how do you see, on the one hand, the barriers? Why are there such problems to access finance? Under which circumstances? And what would be a way to bypass these problems, to solve these problems?
Well, I will also speak about my own experiences. So when we were able to build our first 3 wind turbines in the city of Eeklo on public land, we noticed that with our plan, even with our permit, it was very hard to raise money from citizens. We had to solve this. For instance, my wife and I, we took a second mortgage on our home. So we solved the problem. The members of the board solved the problem, some friends. But once the wind turbines were installed and up and running, the money kept flowing in, and in 3 years times we didn't have a bank loan anymore. To give you an idea, EcoPower has, with the 60,000 members, it has an equity of 60 million euro, and for the moment no bank loans. We even have a lot of money on the bank account, waiting for investments to come. So one of the problems to overcome for a starting initiative is to get the first, well, the equity needed for getting a financial close with a bank, for instance, to order solar panels or wind turbines. So what we as a federation, we are trying to set up now is a sort of a mutual among cooperatives, experienced cooperatives with money and others smaller who are starting, is to give them a sort of temporary equity. Actually, we want to give them time to raise money. This could, of course, also be, Europe could help us in setting up that fund. And as was said, one of the problems is when you go to the European Investment Bank, for instance, you have to come with a project of at least 30 million euro. Otherwise, they don't even look at your project. So this is something we should overcome. And then there's another type of cooperatives, another type of community energy projects. That's are the ones who are expanding or are growing very fast. An example of this is the Kramer project, a project of 2 cooperatives in the Netherlands. It's a 240 million euro wind project, where they had to team up with the wind turbine manufacturer, who is now, because of problems in Germany, because there's no, the market has been slowing down, he sold his 50%, and the cooperatives could not take back everything. So these are problems we are facing. So it's problems with starting cooperatives, and there are problems with growing cooperatives. And yeah, maybe later we can come back to what governments could do.
Yes, thank you for that. Then Habiba, what's your experience? Do you have, with the projects you do, you see any barriers to access finance, and how could that be improved?
So basically, the financing of our projects has been very, like across board. The only kind of financing that we haven't actually accessed is equity. We've been able to access debt from BetterVest. BetterVest is a crowdfunding platform from Germany, and they financed our solar home kits that we deployed across several communities in Nigeria. We've also gotten funds from the Dutch Good Fund through Atradius. This is an export finance where you have to partner with a company in the Netherlands, and then it enables the company work with you to supply solutions, and then Atradius covers the cost, and you pay back Atradius or the RVU over the agreed time of payment. Then we've been very lucky with a couple of funds from USADF, the former DFID, which is now FCDU, but then they were DFID under the Solar Nigeria program. Currently, the IMAS project we're running is
So is it general problem with Habiba, or?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, let's give it a few seconds. Okay. Yeah, then I would suggest that I directly now go to Dr. Rahman, and then come back to Habiba as soon as her connection is reestablished, which we hope.
Program financing,
okay.
And this is about. Sorry about that. My internet behaved. Yeah, so these are the kind of finance. Oh, sorry. Okay, so these are the kind of financing that we've been able to access, and now currently the solar drying project that we're doing is one that's been on the DFID funded or FCDU funded PropCom Make LFE project. That's a medium scale project that we're trying to see how many of these solar drying solutions can we deploy across 3 states in Nigeria. How many women can we ensure economic growth for? And so it's across board, trying to solve a couple of the UN SDGs. So yeah, for us, it's been a very lucky thing for me, for being a woman, because we've also been able to access some funding from some women-owned and women-supporting organizations like Vital Voices, the Diane von Furstenberg Foundation, and others. So those are the kind of support that we've seen in this sector. But I still feel that as a female-owned business, I mean, I see my contemporaries who are men, I see that they actually do have a lot more access to financing than we do. And I think that this is because inherently, I mean, from past, it's been like women-owned organizations have been seen to be those ones who support women to do small businesses, or sell this lantern here, or do this little small business. So I think the launch pad, that drawing line needs to be toppled over, where women-owned businesses in this sector can actually be seen to be able to carry on big financing and actually grow businesses as well. So that's the current position that we are at, trying to seek how do we access financing that makes a lot of sense. I mean, huge amounts of money that can ensure that the work that we're doing across communities can actually be doubled, expanded upon, because I see that the work that we do ensures the community get the access to the energy that actually ensures livelihood development, protects, promotes women empowerment, ensures children have access to better education, and all of that.
Thanks so much, and I think you introduced an important aspect here, with the gender aspect. We've just done our World Community Power Conference about women in community energy, and found this a very important aspect that indeed it needs to be addressed. So thanks for raising this perspective here as well. That's very important, obviously. Now, Dr. Rahman, where do you see the main barriers? I mean, you have a lot of experience, positive experience. You must also have some negative experience from Bangladesh. So what is your experience? Where are the problems for community energy? And then at the same time, also from your experience as the governor of the central bank, what kind of support is needed from governments and from financial institutions in order to scale up community energy? And which role do fiscal policies play?
Thank you, Stephen. The barriers for small and medium enterprises are almost universal, but for renewable energy, those companies who have gone for renewable companies is even worse, in the sense that the mindset is still not changed to renewable energy. And the government has been giving a lot of subsidy for the fossil fuel based energies. So it's very difficult for someone in business of the renewable energies, unless it's heavily subsidized from any agency or anywhere, it is very difficult to compete with the fossil fuel based subsidies that the conventional energy get. So therein, that's the reason the central bank went for refinancing facilities, so that people can get this debt at a lower rate of interest. And we could not, as a central bank, we could not really go to them directly. So we encourage the banks to go to the NGOs or the cooperatives who will be organizing the community. And we created a fund about 2,000 million taka in Bangladesh as a part of that, which gave it to the banks, and they went. And initially they did pretty well, in the sense that the NGOs, the social business companies, they really organized their people, and then thousands of them became owners of those pumps that I was talking about. Many of them also got, became members of the mini grids. Some of them people also organized mini grids like that. But the problem is, as I can still say that, problem is that unless the net metering facilities by the government is well planned, some of these companies cannot sustain, because you cannot sell your energy throughout the year unless someone buys it from you in the off-grid, off-season. So the net metering is one option. The government can buy those surplus electricity from the groups into the national grid. Bangladesh has of late started this buying electricity from the groups, but the problem is that they didn't keep much of a difference. They pay the same price of which they sell it to a customer. I thought if you really want to push renewable energy, the government should really give another 20 to 25% rise for the electricity price, which they get it from the government. So unless we put that differential, it will be difficult to spread it, because the cost can be very, very high. But fortunately, the technology is now spreading, and technology is allowing low cost production of the renewable energy, and that will make it more competitive. But the government should also create a lot of tax incentives for the changes for the green energy equipments and others. As a governor, what I did, I really encouraged local production of the photovoltaics, PVs, and we gave extra money to the companies to prepare, have the PVs manufactured in Bangladesh, and that gave some liberation. But we did it from the central bank. The government really didn't come forward that way to help it much. Later, seeing these experiments, the government came in through ITCOL, and they helped mobilize funds from World Bank, KfW, GPO, BA, ADB, and they started a big program where 30 of the NGOs are now working, and they are planning about 50,000 installations of the solar irrigation pumps. And also the street lights are being really given solars through grants by the government, and some of the mini grids are also providing electricity. So I thought the government must realize that if you really want to go green, you got to invest in it. But because the fossil-based electricities are produced by large corporates, they get a lot of subsidies from the government, but the renewable energies are still behind because they're not so powerful. And only a socially responsible regulator, we did some support, and the government are now coming in, but we should continue to encourage the government to provide more support to this.
Thanks so much. And I think indeed, as you had such a key position in, one of the most important positions in a country's economy, we wish we had more such people with your mindset, but unfortunately we do not. But I hope that we can contribute to changing the mindset of people in such important positions.
I'd strongly encourage IRENA to document some of these activities that we have done. Now that I am not a governor, but some of the results are still there, and the central bank it has still the Sustainable Finance Department, and they have recently given a very good regulation on how to promote sustainable finance. So I thought someone should really document what the hell going on in Bangladesh.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent proposal. We try to cover these things a little bit, but of course this white paper is now rather broad. Let me now ask you, Habiba, again. Now also after hearing this, and we heard already where you get your finance from, you also talked about crowdfunding. That's of course rather the kind of the small scale approach of getting finance, but it can be big as well. If I ask you which kind of financial instruments you would like to see that would allow you really to upscale your activities, what would you answer?
So for me now, I kind of think that equity is a good option of finance for especially community energy, because community energy is a business model that actually needs a lot of patient financing, because it's not money that it's not a source of a business model that is going to ensure that the person who invests will actually find the money immediately. So impact investors should look closer at how to ensure that they provide financing to organizations or communities that organizations who work with community energy, or communities who are willing to actually come out there and seek for financing to develop solutions that will help their communities grow. Another kind of finance is I used crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a reasonably minimally priced kind of financing. At 8%, it's really nice, but when you take into consideration the fact that we have exchange rate fluctuations, and currently you have, so in the long run, maybe paying back that kind of financing will actually mean a lot more than it was when the money was accessed. Then I don't think that will fit, especially when it is a debt crowdfunding and not, let's say, a free amount of money. You know, you have the Just Giving or GoFundMe, which is like you can actually source for financing and the crowd pays and it's for free. That one is different. That will actually do a lot of community energy work easily. But if it has to be like the debt type, for example, BetterVest, LenderHand, Trine, Sunfunder, then if it's direct to community, then that is going to be a difficult dice to play, because when you think about exchange rate fluctuations, especially in Nigeria, where there's always that drive. When we took the BetterVest, the euro was at 410 naira. The euro today is like 550 naira, and we are repaying. So yeah, thinking about community energy that needs time and patience and all of that, that will not be a nice. And of course, then grants will be a very good one. One of the things that I always tell people, especially manufacturers of the technologies, is that it is one thing to manufacture an amazing, innovative technology. It's another thing to ensure that that technology gets to the people. And innovation is always only as good as the impact it makes. So getting to those communities is also a very difficult kind of job. It's difficult terrains, depending on the country that you're working in, but most West African countries are actually not easy to access the rural communities. So it's also as expensive to get into that. So one of the things, one of the kind of financing that I've seen recently that has really helped is co-sharing. So there was a certain finance from the Dutch government called the Challenge for Youth Employment, where they were emphasizing on leveraging people and the youth from the rural communities to become maybe business owners, or just kind of get an activity that will ensure they get some income every month. And that kind of financing is given 50% as grants, so you can source 50% from anywhere else. So that grant can actually help to do all of the overheads of marketing, finding the recruitment and recruiting the right kind of people, getting into the communities and all of that. And then the other kind of finance that you get is now targeted at ensuring that the product is, the right kind of product is accessed and deployed to the communities. So yeah, I think if I were to choose, I would really like the mix, the very healthy mix of grants, debt, and equity financing.
Thank you, but that is also calling for specific instruments or mix of instruments for community energy. Yeah, then let me come back to Dirk. Dirk, you've already spoken about your personal experience, which I think is very good to show how people get involved in this. Now let's talk a little bit again about the European level, as you are representing the European Umbrella Organization. And of course, we know that Europe is quite diverse. We have some countries like Germany or Denmark where community energy used to be a mainstream model, but that switch from feed-in tariff to auctions has done a lot of damage. But now, anyway, if you look at Europe as such, with its diversity, what do you think would help the European community energy sector to flourish?
Well, in theory, everything is present now at the European level to make community energy flourish. So over the past few years, the European Commission and the Parliament and the member states, they have been revising all kinds of directives on energy. And we were able to convince everyone that we needed good definitions on what is community energy, and we got these definitions. Now all the member states are are transposing these new directives in their member state or regional legislation, which is now going on. And one of the things they also have to do is to assess the obstacles for community energy, and they should create. Every member state has to create an enabling framework for community energy, so that it can flourish, that citizens and groups of citizens can take up their share, their part in the energy market. So now we're trying to follow up on this, and if member states or people from administrations or our members, they ask us, but what's a good enabling framework? Already, as Anna and also in the study it's mentioned, we can only point out that what Scotland has been doing over the past decade, or even more than a decade, is still a very good example. It's not perfect; it can be made better. What did they do? Well, they in their renewable energy target, they also made a sub-target for community energy, and that's not the only thing they did. They also they created the CARES scheme. The CARES scheme is a scheme that not only there's not only a financial part of it with grants and loans, but there is also a part of support, technical support and organizational support for starting community energy groups. And in fact, it gives a sort of, for starting groups, sort of guarantee that if your project fails, for instance, a wind project, because there are too many birds or bats or whatever, that you don't lose all your money. So this is one of the things that works very well, a sort of guarantee system that your local group, your community, that they put their money in it, in studies, expensive studies on birds, and that the result is that your project can't proceed. So this is a very good, it has proven to be very good. So why is it not perfect? You're very easily a community energy project in Scotland. One farmer can already be a community energy project, can start a community energy project. So that's a good scheme. And so it should be a sort of a mix of grants and loans for beginners, temporary equity for beginners and for those who grow. Yeah, that's how we see that this enabling framework could look like. And so we're now trying to look at how the transposition is going on, and then how the enabling framework in the different countries will look like, and then we will see how it works, if it works, or if it, of course, if there's no money foreseen, that you can make a good enabling framework, but without money, so it won't work either. So that's what our federation is now trying to do with all its members and other organizations, is to try to follow up on the transposition.
Thanks so much, Dirk. And I think in particular in Europe, we can also still learn from those countries which have started that. Denmark in the 80s, Germany in the 90s, and then some other countries learned from the policy frameworks which were in place at that time, which created that strong movement that we have now. Now I'm looking at the time, and I think before we start another round, Stephanie, I would conclude this, and we keep a little bit more time at the end, or 1 minute now more time for the questions and answers at the end. And like to say thank you from my side. Again, thank you, great thank you to the IRENA team for arranging this, and of course also for everybody who contributed to the white paper. And with this, I hand over back to Rabia.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Thank you for all the great work as a co-chair of the working group. I would like to now open the floor to IRENA member states to make their interventions. If you would like to make an intervention, please click on the raise your hand button. And I would like to kindly remind you to keep your intervention limited to 5 minutes. I will start with the EU, with Ms. Ana Maria Sanchez Infante, who is Policy Officer at the European Commission. Anna, if you can start your intervention. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much. Very happy to shortly introduce in this forum what the European Commission is doing on the energy communities front. Basically, just to be very brief and stick to the time, I'm going to present you very shortly our policy context and also the specific provisions we have on energy communities. You have certainly heard of what we call the European Green Deal, which was set into force 1 year ago with a new European Commission and announced by President Ursula von der Leyen. And the main objective is to become climate neutral by 2050. And this, of course, it's an instrument in law because we have very specific targets set in different fronts where member states have to comply with. For example, by 2030, member states have to comply with very specific targets for renewable energy, for greenhouse gas emissions, and for energy efficiency. And due to this new greater ambition of climate neutrality, we have made different assessments, and we need even to increase the current targets. This is what we have proposed as the European Commission to the member states, and this is currently being negotiated between Parliament and member states. Of course, we don't come just recently from this context because we have different legislative frameworks which are enshrined under what we call the clean energy package. And here we have directives on energy efficiency, on renewables, and also on the electricity market design. And you can imagine that I mean, due to this increased ambitions and member states complying with targets, they need to come up with doubling or sometimes even tripling the current renewables capacity. And we thought that to arrive to these very ambitious targets, we need to involve more the citizen in this development. And here's where we wanted to give a little bit more of focus and really like that the citizen can participate actively in the renewables deployment. And this is where we have enshrined in law the role of renewable energy communities. So why now a little bit also the reasoning why to give this new empowerment to the citizen or to the consumer. As I said, we see that they have an active participation, of course, in this increased renewable deployment in Europe. We were also a little bit afraid about project acceptance because we know that there's still, I mean, citizens in general, of course, they want they're in favor of cleaner energy, but they don't want to have the windmill in their backyard, as we say. So we wanted a little bit in the way of involving them to increase this project acceptance. We thought also that via the energy communities, it's a good tool to mobilize additional capital. So it would be interesting for the private capital to look for new investment projects. And this energy communities would also be an important tool to increase the flexibility in the market. So now to just to wrap up, basically we have a clear definition in law about what is a renewable energy community, and here a very important concept to focus is that it's more a social concept rather than a financial profit. So the renewable energy community should be more focused on environmental, economic, and social objectives rather than looking only for financial profits. So this is a clear distinction and important to raise in this case. This was already mentioned by the representative of ResCorp, that member states have to introduce what we call an enabling framework to facilitate and promote renewable energy communities. So they need to make participation open to all citizens. They need to facilitate access to finance and information. They need to get rid of barriers, etc., etc. And finalizing, as this was already mentioned, this directive is still under transposition, and this will be, the deadline is next year in June. And the Commissioner, of course, is actively participating in helping member states to correctly implement legislation. Thank you very much, and happy also to answer any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. This is very interesting. Yes, indeed, I think, I mean, of course, this is music to our ear, you know, that we should focus on the social and economic aspects much more, or maybe either more or at least at the same level of other concerns that we usually have. But also, I think what it reminded me of, many of the conversation and also your intervention, is the fact that we had such high hopes and a few years ago still of because of the decentralized nature of renewable, that this would sort of somehow trickle down and have we would have a more decentralized and democratic decision-making process in terms of the energy sector, which has not quite materialized. But I think, as you say, we know the challenges, and having regulation like the EU is trying to introduce would certainly make a big difference, and hopefully this will also sort of influence other countries around the world. Thank you very much again, Anna. I will go back. I will go now to the Philippines. Ms. Milen Capongcol, who is Director of Renewable Energy Management Bureau at the Department of Energy. Thank you for keeping your intervention to 5 minutes, please. I'm sorry, I hear that Philippines cannot connect, or there's some issue. So we'll go now to Canada. Mr. Sean McCallum, who is Senior Advisor and Program Manager, Clean Energy for Rural and Remote Communities Program, Natural Resources Canada. Thank you very much, Sean, for being with us, and we will listen to your intervention.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned, I am a Senior Advisor and Program Manager. I work for the Department of Natural Resources for the Government of Canada. Canada, just like much of the other countries in the world, are on the cusp of a clean energy and low carbon transformation. The economic impacts of COVID-19 have exaggerated existing disparities, as well as created new ones. However, there is an opportunity for green economic recovery that is both transformative and inclusive. In Canada, there are over 200 remote communities and industrial sites that rely entirely on diesel for heat and power. Many of these communities are Indigenous or have significant Indigenous populations. There are also many other communities in Canada that are grid connected. However, they do suffer from reliability issues and remain diesel dependent or dependent on other fossil fuels as a backup source of power. Canada believes that access to affordable and reliable clean energy is a foundational element to supporting these communities to reduce their reliance on diesel, and it represents a key priority of our government for a renewed relationship with Indigenous peoples based on the principles of reconciliation and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Work is already underway in Canada. In March of 2018, the governments of Canada and the provincial government of Ontario announced a $1.6 billion to connect 16 remote off-grid communities in Northern Ontario to the provincial grid. This project entails the construction of 1,800 kilometers of new transmission lines and will offset $1 billion in fuel costs over the next 40 years. The project itself is being managed by Wate Power, which is a transmission company that is majority owned by 22 First Nation communities in Northern Ontario. Supporting community-led initiatives is also a key feature of our government's plan to transition to cleaner sources of energy and the low-carbon economy. Our department, the Natural Resources, manages a $220 million grant program to help deploy and demonstrate renewable energy technologies, encourage energy efficiency initiatives, and help to build community skills and knowledge in Canada's rural and remote communities. This program works directly with communities and their partners on developing solutions that represent local priorities. So far, we've been able to mobilize about 90 renewable energy and capacity building projects in over 130 communities, and 90% of those are community-led or owned by those communities. A good example of a project that has been recently been announced is a $4.5 million investment by the government towards a 2.2 megawatt solar and energy storage project in northern Alberta. This project is the largest off-grid solar project in Canada, and it's owned by 3 neighboring Indigenous groups in the community of Fort Chipewyan. It is just underway now, and it's going to start producing 20% of the electricity generation for the entire community, and it will displace 650,000 liters of diesel fuel every year. It also provides an important revenue stream for the community that can be reinvested in other priorities. Another key feature of Canada's approach to advancing community-led energy projects
I think we have an issue with internet.
My apologies, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Sean. Go ahead.
I'm almost done.
We lost you. I mean, I lost you at least when you spoke about the 20% of electricity that would be covered by this project for the community.
Perfect, thank you. So just to finish that thought, that project will reduce the diesel consumption in that community by 650,000 liters per year and provides an important revenue stream for that community to reinvest in other priorities. Another key feature of Canada's approach to advancing community-led energy projects is investing in community-level capacity building. It's something we heard a little bit about today in the presentations. Investments in initiatives like technical training, peer-to-peer networks, and community energy planning help position communities as leaders in the renewable energy field and empower its members to take charge of their energy future. Investments made by these initiatives are helping to shift the ownership models for renewable energy projects in favor of community-led and owned projects in Canada. And this can provide significant benefits to communities through revenue and employment, and in turn can be reinvested in communities to generate local economic development opportunities. As Canada continues to move forward with our clean energy transition, we will be working directly with Indigenous and rural communities in Canada to help deploy these technologies. And we believe that there's many valuable experiences that we're hoping we'll be able to share with partner countries as we move ahead in partnership with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This remote off-grid community project and the change of ownership you speak about are very important, and their success is then definitely what is going to drive community energy to scale up. I think we have a project with Canada on a remote off-grid community project, including socioeconomic impacts. So we look forward to working on that project with you. Next in line is Italy. Mr. Michele Panella, Energy Services Manager at Italian Energy Services Agency. Thank you, Michele, for your intervention.
Thank you very much, Rabia. Thank you, everyone. I would like just to briefly describe Italy's experience on this topic. As you may know, we have reached good results in the energy transition process, but we still have to invest a lot for meeting, for example, the 2030 targets we set in our integrated energy and climate plan. So for this purpose, we adopted a variety of measures aimed also at stimulating communities' participation in energy projects, because we think that they can play, and they surely play, a central role in the new energy systems. So on the one hand, we are trying to, let's say, increase communities' awareness and knowledge on energy issues. And on the other hand, we are trying to help them make the right investments in renewables. So just to mention a couple of, let's say, activities, initiatives we have implemented, I would like to start with the national portal, the so-called self-consumption portal, which provides people, citizens, with all sorts of information on incentivizing mechanisms, procedures, barriers for building renewable plants or implementing energy efficiency projects. But this portal mainly provides communities, people with an innovative photovoltaic simulator, for example, which allows them to make in an autonomous way, in a user-friendly way, all the technical and economic assessments, for example, for building photovoltaic plants on the roofs of their houses. So in addition to the classical economic data, cash flows, payback period, and so on, it also models many technical features, for example, the presence of energy storage devices, and automatically through satellite images and artificial intelligence, it also calculates the best orientation, the presence of shadows and the effect on production and so on. So this is a general, let's say, tool for helping people gain knowledge on energy issues and renewable plants. On the other hand, I would like to, let's say, briefly describe a local initiative. So the special funds established by local communities, municipalities, for including vulnerable sections of the population in energy projects, and so for tackling also the problem of the issue of energy poverty, which has been amplified by the pandemic. So now new photovoltaic plants for vulnerable families are now being built by using these local funds, which are used for the initial needed investments. And then the energy, so it's a kind of, I would say, shared ownership of the project, as Rabia mentioned before. So the energy is used by vulnerable families who are also educated on energy issues such as self-consumption, energy efficiency, and so on. And then the revenues deriving from the net billing generated by the national incentivizing schemes are used for feeding again the local funds. So we are trying in a way to create a sort of virtuous circle in order to transfer the benefits of the energy transition to people and to educate them on energy issues in a structural way, and not simply by, for example, granting them temporary energy discounts, which would be, I think, a quick fix and not a structural measure. So these are the most relevant measures we are implementing. There are also other ones, but I think these are the most important. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Michele. Yeah, I really appreciate that you spoke about energy poverty, because we often think about energy access and issues in developing countries, but we often forget about energy poverty that happens in countries that are relatively better off, in particular related to women. Actually, there is a greater incidence on women in terms of energy poverty in many of at least European countries we have studied in the past few years. So thank you very much for mentioning that. It's definitely an important aspect that we need to consider. There are no other countries' interventions, so I will steal Stefan's last question and would ask the different panelists, but also Anna Skoron, one question, which is in 2 minutes, please. If you would need to give two recommendations to governments and financial institutions to enable more community-led renewable energy, what would they be? So I'm going to start with Dr. Rahman, and then I'll go to the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. My first recommendation will be that the fiscal policy should come out very strongly in favor of the renewable energy, and they should create a difference between and the conventional energy by giving more tax incentives and they should also provide grants for institutions who will be pushing this agenda, like in Bangladesh, the NGOs and social business enterprises are pushing this. So they should get a sizable portion of the money in grant form and the rest in smaller rate of interest. Secondly, not only the government, the central bank should continue to support the sustainable finance for the renewable energy and give the refinancing facilities at a very low rate of bank through the banks so that they can come in. Secondly, it's not only their banks, all the institutions, all the companies, the corporates should really come out with their social responsibility for these remote areas where people are still not getting access to energy. They should be given a lot of support in terms of renewable energies, because renewable energies are also sources of future jobs and growth. So I thought it will be for their benefit to create that demand within the communities. So number one, the fiscal policy support. Number two, socially responsible support from the corporates and also the financial institutions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahman. Habiba? Is Habiba with us? Yeah. So Habiba, what are your two recommendations to governments and financial institutions to
Can you
scale
hear
up?
me? Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you now. For a while, I knew you called me then. I couldn't hear. Okay, so basically my recommendation to governments is, I think Nigeria is doing a lot more now. So, I mean, that's like a relief. There's been some upsurge in the kind of activities that are geared towards renewable energies. I mean, it's a far cry from what it was some 5-6 years back. So we can't complain, but be very appreciative. But I think there's more that can be done, especially when it comes to ease of access to the kind of financing that they are, they are also leveraging upon to help ensure that the deployment of renewable energies goes far and wide in Nigeria. I think they should also look at the space and see the kind of organizations that have been there and have actually done some sort of evidence community energy work and how they would want to expand on that and find a way or a mechanism to work together with such people to expand upon their work and not just passing the financing through the normal commercial bank terms is one thing that could actually also defeat the process and slow down action, because currently some of the financing is actually going through the central bank, then the central bank will give it to the commercial banks, and it still has all the requirements of this very heavy 150% collateral. Of course, okay, the interest rate is now really nice, which we used to get loans at 25%, but we're not getting it for at least a single digit. But I think a little bit more needs to be done to ensure the smoothing of the process for especially small companies that want to also come into the space and do the kind of work that needs to be done to ensure that community energy access is actually ramped up and pretty quickly. So besides these two, I think so far so good, especially in my country. I think there's been a lot of hype in renewable energies and a lot of things are happening. And I just hope that in the process of all of the hype, we do not lose focus and actually do not deploy renewable energies to areas that really do not need it.
Thank you very much, Habiba. I'm gonna now give the floor to Dirk.
Yes, my recommendations. Well, in most European countries, I don't know that much about the other continents, but in most of the European countries, the energy transition, the cost of it is reflected in the tariffs of low voltage end users, which are mainly households, citizens, and very small businesses. And or it is paid by them through their taxes, or it is paid by them through their savings, which are lent to big developers, and they don't get any interest anymore. So it seems more than fair that, and that's our demand in most of the European countries, that for every big renewable energy project, like a wind project or a large PV project, that all developers have to offer a certain share of these developments to the citizens and the municipalities, the small local players. And this seems quite utopic, but in the Netherlands, in the climate agreement, this is something that they strive for. And now, when it comes down to getting a permit on the local level, this aim becomes more or less like an obligation. So our members in the Netherlands, they have a lot of work nowadays, and so it seems more than fair. So it looks like this sub-target from Scotland, but there it was in gigawatts or in megawatts expressed, 1 gigawatt, I think it was. So we very much like this community energy sub-target. And then, of course, an enabling framework, where I already referred to Scotland as an example of how it could work. And we to give it a more to give people a picture, we are community energy organizations, cooperatives, and other legal entities. We're cyclists, and we need a bike lane, and governments don't have to force us, or banks don't have to force us in financial institutions. They don't have to force us on the highway among the trucks, because we're cyclists, and so we need a bike lane. Thank you.
Very nice image. Thank you. Anna?
Yes, thank you. So I would say that my 2 recommendations are that we need a level playing field for renewables. So since I'm often hearing renewables don't need subsidies, but they do need non-discriminatory political frameworks. And we see that everything we are doing, our whole society is basically built on a pretty much old-fashioned fossil fuel-based energy system. There was a question on grids. The current centralized grids are pretty much fossil fuel tailored grids. So we need to rethink that and really provide a level playing field for renewables. That being said, community energy specifically, we are talking about people here. We are not talking about multi-million or multi-billion dollar companies. So they do need some kind of capacity building sometimes, or financial assistance in terms of what kind of financial vehicles are available, how can we use those? And to do so, we need either dedicated agencies or one-stop shops. Dirk mentioned it before, like in Scotland, who can provide this kind of knowledge and capacity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Several nice recommendations around fiscal policy, grants, level playing field, sustainable finance. I'm trying to remember them. I did write some of them. Ease of access to finance, of course. Replicability of existing and successful business models. Of course, a one-stop shop. Also, I really like Dirk's idea about giving the community back a share, let's say, offer a share to the municipality or to other community, other stakeholders from the major projects. And finally, some financial and capacity building that is needed for this. So I think most of them, or if not all of them, are reflected in the report. Thanks to all of you who have contributed. Again, thank you, Stefan, for the moderation. Thank you all to all the panelists who have participated in this discussion, to the member countries for their valuable contribution, to the audience, of course. I would like to specifically thank the entire Community Energy Working Group of the Coalition for Action. They really have devoted a lot of time on this topic and for this report that we're launching today. And that includes Stefan Zenger, Shota Furuya, and Anna Skoron. I'm sorry, I don't say it very well, I think. There's many contributors to this report. Actually, I counted when I asked Stephanie for the list. They are, in addition to the contributing authors, like 32 contributors. So it means there is a really huge degree of interest in this from different type of stakeholders, whether it's the private sector, civil society, industry associations, others. But last but not least, I would like to really thank the Coalition for Action group at IRENA, who has been really working very hard on this as well. So Stephanie Vekand, Emma Abag, Kelly Tai, and Anindya Bhagirath, together with some colleagues at the policy unit in IRENA, who have also contributed to this report. And again, I hope we can take this discussion further in the future. And on behalf of IRENA, I would like to thank everyone for participating to this policy talk number 4 and the last one for the year. Thank you again, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabia. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.